Hello everybody and welcome back to Cut Content, the show where we invite a guest along to bring 3 of their pet peeves from the world of video games that we consign to be cut from video games forever. My name is Ben.
My name is Peter. And with us is Sam from Cultaholic. Sorry.
Yeah, it's me. Hello.
Just enough of a pause there that you thought I was feeding
I'm
you
so
in.
used to doing the news every morning where it's just like jump on each other as quick as you can.
Rough and tumble.
Now you're on the channel where we deliberately talk over each other.
Yeah,
so
all the
you're
time.
trying to get used to that, yeah.
So,
Welcome to the show.
Excellent.
Yeah.
This show, as we said, is where the guest brings along 3 things from the world of video games they want cut forever. Sam, you've helped us out on the channel before.
Yes.
We've spoken to you about Stadia.
Yeah.
You subbed in for Tiny Peter on the podcast once as well. So we know that you're a big video game fan.
Yes.
People said you should replace me on the podcast.
That's cruel.
There were a few comments saying, "Oh, Sam was really interesting." Some people say, "Can we just have more Sam?"
I just talk about old games. That's
I thought this was better than when Peter's here. So.
Well, we're going to have some sort of head-to-head debate.
Me and Sam.
Who's the superior podcast replacement?
Yeah.
Until then, Sam, would you like to remind us sort of your sphere of gaming that you exist within? Because obviously on a day-to-day basis you cover the wrestles on YouTube.
Yeah.
But you also like to do the video games in your spare time, but it's not necessarily the conventional modern day video games.
Yeah, so I used to game a hell of a lot, like just all the time when I was sort of coming through uni and everything. I had all the time in the world, and as you become more of an adult, sadly, if you're out there and you're not an adult yet, all of that gets taken away from you. Gets taken away from you, and now I'm lucky if I can get maybe a 4-hour gaming session in, and that's intense for me now. So I tend to stick within a sphere of just whatever I can get my hands on. Like for instance, I'm super late to the party, but I'm about 3/4 of the way through Spider-Man now.
Oh, nice.
Yes. I try and jump on things like Final Fantasy I'll be getting on day of release, stuff like that. But mainly I just sort of go back and play old games now.
Yeah. You like your older stuff, don't you? Like I always forget the number of generations. Like
it's
like
on the
or whatever.
I don't know what it is.
Like pre-5th gen, maybe or 5th gen down. But I just got Sega Saturns. I've got a Dreamcast. I'm a collector of Sega stuff, so I've still got a few consoles to go yet. But I like just going through and playing. Sort of, if I'm reading up on a new game, it's inspired by this studio, I'll go back. It's inspired by that's inspired by this, and I'll just sort of play my way back to the very start. And it, more often than not, just always ends up being something like Wolfenstein. And it's here we go again.
It all goes back to the three shooters.
Mr. Romero.
Yes, exactly. So we're going to see some of those, your sort of retro, I say retro, but it's retro now, isn't it?
Yeah.
Your retro sort of enjoyments, are they going to be influencing your cuts today?
One cut is sort of about this, or sort of about it, and the other one is maybe about the complexity of games these days. Yeah.
Well, why don't we just find out right now? Sam, what's the first thing you would like to cut from all of gaming?
Well, the first thing I'd like to cut from all of gaming, I don't know which camera to look down.
Yeah, whichever one you like.
Here we go.
Yeah.
Me and Ben. The first thing I'd like to cut from all of gaming is rushed releases.
Okay, that sounds like a fair one. Give us some examples.
So, I mean, there's one big shining example. I'm from the wrestling world.
Of course.
We have had a great history of strong wrestling games, no matter what Joe Hendry would tell you when he was on the show. There have been some real gems, there's been some terrible games. We're moved into more of a simulation style gameplay in the modern games, which is a bit I prefer the arcade stuff, but we recently had WWE 2K20 and they were sort of on a tear. It looked great, everything was working well, and then it released and it was terrible. It was utterly terrible, and on January 1st 2020 a clock problem with the code in the game made it unplayable, completely unplayable.
2K20 unplayable in 2K20.
Yeah, I love that it was literally a clock problem in that, like, people who were playing, like at 11 p.m. that night on New Year's Eve, and then like 5 minutes past midnight, they're suddenly like, wait, what? Why is it not working anymore?
I can't do literally anything.
Yeah.
But I think gaming's one of the only spheres you can get away with this. It happened recently in film, but what I'm about to say, but like, you couldn't really release a half finished film. So like a CG heavy film, like you get 3/4 of the way through, and then every other shot is ungreen screened, unkeyed, like unaffected, and it's just 4 blokes, stood in a warehouse. You'd leave the cinema, everybody'd be a bit upset about it, but a studio couldn't then just come out and be like, it'll be fixed next week. Although they did this with Cats recently.
Yeah, I heard
Cats,
this.
There's some sly shots where you can see that Judi Dench is wearing like a suit.
Really?
She's got a wedding finger, like the rings on her finger and everything, and they did this so that they could get it into cinemas, knowing full well a week later they were going to replace it. It's an identical film, just these 2 little bits of CG throughout. It was so they could make the window for the Oscars.
Oh God! Well, I'm glad they made the window for the Oscars.
Poorly judged priorities there, wasn't
Good job
it?
they did that, or they wouldn't have won all those Oscars.
So did they look at it and think, well, the rest of this film is a masterpiece,
Yes, of
obviously,
course, yeah.
so that's
But
fine.
It's what I mean. You couldn't release like an album like that. You couldn't release a film like that. You couldn't do a TV show like that. But gaming gets away with that. I don't know if we're sort of to blame. Like we pre-order a lot, despite the fact everybody reminds everybody to never pre-order. Sometimes it's just overwhelming. You want that Fallout 76 backpack that never arrived.
You've got to have that canvas bag.
Canvas bag.
And I think mainly people like my brother, like he plays FIFA every single year. He's a big avid player of Ultimate Team, which is a whole thing in and of itself as a problem, but like pay to win mechanic style thing and loot boxes. But it's like when you're paying for a game, like I think it was Madden this year, somebody like broke the boundaries, went up into the stands, and it's Madden 20, but there was like Madden 18 on the back of the stands and stuff, where they literally just replaced, this and this. Give it a quick once over, all the new rosters, and that's it. So I don't know if that element feeds into it, the fact there's got to be a game every year. I don't know if I'd prefer, do a FIFA every 2 years and do a big, a halfway update for maybe 20 quid.
Right.
That gives you like a small bit, bit DLC.
Yeah, well, I mean, that's, there's a bunch of franchises and stuff that you do notice that when they say, okay, no, now we're not going to just bring out the next one next year like we have been for so long. You do have a noticeable improvement. Like people say that the latest Assassin's Creed is a lot better than like previous entries. And that had like 2 years instead of 1 year to be put together. I think there's definitely an element of like rushing things out annually.
It's that, and like there's day one patches, which is fine and everything. You can usually play for a bit without, unless it's like Assassin's Creed Unity. But you can usually at least play unless there's some sort of save error. But even the day one patches now, they're getting up to like 90 gig.
Yeah, it's like bigger than the original game and stuff.
It's like
definitely.
How am I supposed to? I think it was Red Dead, the first day one patch. I got the game, took it home. We had potato internet, and it took about 4.5 hours.
More recently, we've had Star Wars Jedi Fallen Order, which they definitely
want to play that.
Definitely wanted out before Christmas, which is understandable to cash in on Star Wars, the new film and so on. But I purposefully waited until Christmas, mainly so I could get it as a present. But also because I thought maybe some of the glitches and technical issues people have been having will have been patched out by then. And I've been falling through the world and texture problems, and it's very apparent that this game is fundamentally fine, but it shouldn't have come out when it did. If it came out in February, it would have been absolutely sorted, because at the time of recording, they've literally just released a very big patch that fixes loads of issues, and it's the end of January. It's like it shouldn't have, and it came out in when, November?
Yeah, November, I think.
That's mad. That shouldn't be okay, and a lot of people seem to just either ignore these issues or not have them at all, which I don't understand, because I had so many issues.
Part of the problem with the Fallen Order thing is that people were just so desperate for a single player, straightforward Star Wars
people do just
title.
forgive a lot of the flaws there.
It could be, much worse than anything else we've had, but as long as it's not utterly terrible, then at least it's a step in the right direction, and hey, you got to pat them on the back for that. But it's do you really?
I think I'm guilty of that, actually, because like when it first came out and we did like a quick scope on it and we talked about it on the podcast, I said like, oh yeah, there's performance issues when you're running around in like the first main like open world planet area. It's like genuinely like 20 frames per second at times, or like 15. Like when you walk into certain areas, it like just slows to a crawl. And then when we talked about it recently on like Games of the Year, I rated that one like in my top 5, and Ben brought up the fact that we're like, well, there are some performance issues with it, aren't there? And I sort of, as I was talking, I was like, oh yeah,
I've been suckered into this.
And it really was the idea.
I forgot there were
like,
lightsabers in it, and the lightsabers just he's a Jedi, Ben.
Well, that's the point though. Like
there are Wookiees, Ben,
because there's like two-legged creatures in there walking around that aren't human. I forget that it has any problems whatsoever.
That's the problem with Peter.
Yeah.
As soon as he sees
a
aliens,
walking animal,
he's like, right. Doesn't matter. It doesn't matter that it's moving at 2 frames per second. That's an alien,
Definitely
and that's a Star Wars alien. But I think that's a very good point. I think we're happy to cut sort of not necessarily rushed games, but prematurely released games, right?
Yeah. Definitely.
Okay.
So are we saying they will never come out at all?
Yeah, I think so. That's how we do it on
We
this
do
show.
have to corrupt every wish on this show.
We need more stuff where it's just complete vaporware.
Yeah.
We need it. More mystery. There's no mystery anymore.
So if a game gets delayed, it never comes out.
Yeah.
It's either got to come
it.
out broken
They have
or
to
ready.
pick a day, and that's it.
That's the day.
And if that day is approaching and they realise we're not going to be done in time, that's it.
It has to be
That's
picked
not
at least
out.
a year out as well. It's got to be like a proper gamble.
Yeah.
It's a lottery. It's like the Champions League.
GTA 6, we're going to be late by 4 hours. Sorry,
Yeah,
boys.
no.
Shut it
That's
all
it. It's
down.
gone. Put it in the bin. Empty
Snapping the gold
recycle
discs
bin.
in half.
It's out.
Brilliant. Well, there we go. Rushed games are gone.
Cut. Sam,
Yes.
what is the second thing you would like to cut from the world of video games?
See, I mentioned this to James earlier. James got a little bit upset by it because James really likes this feature, and I think
Xbox.
it's going to make
just Xbox
people.
in general.
I think it's going to make people sort of be a bit. Ooh. I don't like over-the-top crafting. I want a nice, big, powerful sword or like set of armor. Fine. Like, why do I have to go and get like 400 daggers and 20 wheels of cheese and some leather,
Right.
and then melt it all down to make a key that opens a cupboard that gives me like another recipe that I then have to go all the way around the world and collect more daggers and then bring them all back, and then eventually I've got to do this, and then to buff it I've got to imbue it with magic, and to do that I've got to, and like, I get it, like crafting is there for like the really high-end stuff, and it's there for the most dedicated players, but why can't you just make it like maybe a 3-step operation and slightly harder than normal gameplay? Like, if I want the really powerful sword, I don't want to have to sink 10 hours of gameplay into getting it. Like, I only have a few hours here and there. I don't know. I can't get away with crafting. It does my head in.
Have you played Monster Hunter?
I've seen Monster Hunter being played, and the inventory alone made me ill.
It sounds like it will be your actual, literal worst nightmare in video game form.
Yeah. I mean, the thing I find worse is I understand like crafting weapons, and sometimes you got to do ridiculous stuff to get it. Sometimes it's a bit too much, but it's when you've got to do things like, I think Far Cry 4 had it as well, but Far Cry 3 definitely had it, where you have to craft pouches.
Right.
It's like, yes, I've got to go and find items to craft inventory spaces,
to
but I
craft
can only
items.
carry so many items in order to make the inventory.
Right.
Like, that sort of stuff is just like, no, like, I don't care. This isn't Far Cry. Yes, it's a survival game,
Yeah.
but I don't have to drink water every 2 hours or I die. It's not like a high-end survival game
Unless you have
it's
malaria,
like,
of course.
Yeah, but it's not like
I used to think that about. I used to think that about Minecraft mods, and I know, like, a mod isn't an official part of the game, so you can't officially complain that Minecraft has complicated crafting, because it doesn't. But anyway, like, even so, I think some of the interesting mods that like the people at Acast used to do, with like where you have all sorts of like pipes and like nuclear reactors and some really cool ideas. The way that you had to like put those things together was just insane. You had to like go and mine like certain kinds of metals, but you can only do that with like a certain kind of tool, which is a Minecraft, it's part of the Minecraft game. But like, then when you have all these metals, you have to make alloys first before you can do anything, and then turn the alloys into plates of metal and put the plates together, and it's like a 12-step process just to get like a single thing for your nuclear reactor. And I get the idea that it's like, oh well, but you get a big reward at the end of it.
Yeah, it's the challenge.
It's sort of like, I guess, like, if I bought an engine block and built an engine from start to finish, that's the goal. So I'd enjoy doing that, because I like meticulous, boring things, like getting a Lego set. Like, you have all these pieces, you put them together, but I don't have to go and make the plastic first.
Exactly. Yeah.
I don't have to
just cut out a few of the steps.
Yeah,
I
you
think.
just cut a few of the steps out, because I think part of it is like games like film. It's escapism. For me, at least, I go and play play games, especially RPGs, for complete escapism. And when you watch like an old Hollywood film or like a current Hollywood film, the whole thing is built to take you out of it. You don't realise you're watching a film. But when you have something disruptive that you're sort of like, and it takes you out of it for a second, like when I have to go and do all these millions of things to make an item, it takes me out of it. And I'm like, well, do I really want to do that? And then I become aware I'm playing a game.
Yeah.
And then it's sort of like, oh, well... And then I sort of resign myself sometimes. I'm like, I don't really need the platinum, let's screw it.
Right, yeah.
And just sack it off. Like, it's like, what's it going to do? I can carry on doing this and have fun with it anyway, but...
I suppose it really sort of exploded with the popularity of Minecraft, and then it seemed almost every game. Games have always had.
Crafting was like a little language unto itself.
Yeah, but the vanilla game is, as I say, it's only mods I have a problem with, but the vanilla game I think works quite well in that respect.
Yeah. But then it seemed every other game tried to include some kind of crafting component, like crafting and featuring crafting and survival. It was sort of a flavour thing. Thankfully, it's sort of cooling off now.
Yeah.
But do you think and there may be games like this, which I'm sure people will let us know about in the comments, but do you reckon there's perhaps a different way of approaching crafting? Because as much as I love completing a quest and just being given nice armour, there is something quite satisfying about having to go out in search of the core ingredients. Is there perhaps a new way of doing crafting where the ingredients are a little bit easier to come by, and it's the you actually have to manually construct it yourself through mini games
like
or some kind of tactile thing in game,
rather than
that's actually the process, rather than doing a quest,
keep melting ingots
to get some teeth to decorate your thing with or whatever.
I think if you gamified it would work quite well. I think if there was some sort of UI implementation as well, so that you could maybe, if you have the recipe to make this armor, or recipe instruction to make this armor, you can just have that sitting there, and then you get an alert once you have enough items to craft this piece of it, and you can just sort of go straight into your pause menu and do it there and then.
The other aspect of escapism and like kind of minutiae in an inventory system that I think I've even mentioned it before actually in a different cut content was how in Dragon's Dogma, if you had fish in your inventory, they would slowly start to rot.
I remember you talking about this in the office.
Yeah. And there's like a sweet spot where if they go like a little bit off, you can actually use them for a certain recipe, and like because it's like sort of pickled fish,
like lutefisk.
Yeah, exactly. But if you leave it for too long, then it just becomes a rotten fish in your inventory.
Just a pocket full of rotten fish.
Exactly. And that
it doesn't even like alert you have dropped the rotten fish.
Yeah, you finally go back into your inventory later on, and you're like, oh yeah, I forgot about that fish that I put in my bag.
Just an animated GIF of the developers just doing this.
And just that whole aspect of escapism. It's like, I don't want a game that like has realistic fish in pocket rotting mechanics.
Right.
Like, just let me put some fish in my pocket.
Some people do. That's the weird thing.
It's
I don't know. I'll never understand it.
But the crafting, you'd rather just be either simplified or not there? What would you rather have?
I think simplified. I think the element of crafting should stay. I wouldn't necessarily use the word simple. Like, still make it difficult to do, but just let's make it take 3 steps rather than 50.
Yeah.
Crafting.
Escapism has been cut.
Escapism is gone. Now, all video games
are realistic simulations. Yeah.
Crafting is cut.
Yeah.
In its entirety. It's gone. So no more crafting. It just it just sort of happens. You just suddenly get an armor. And that's how it works.
Well, that's alright. Yeah. I thought there was just no opportunity to ever get armor.
Oh really?
Yeah.
Well, it depends how harshly where you want to go with it.
Harshly, that's what this show is. It's gone. So here we are. Point number 3. Sam, give us the name of the final cut.
It's more of a concept.
Okay.
But it's painful backwards compatibility.
Oh.
So, Xbox is leading the charge, right? Like, I never really wanted an Xbox One. One morning I woke up, really wanted to play Halo, got one, and then it was like, you can play 360 games. And I was like, I've still got a load of discs, great. And then it was like, you can play original Xbox games. I was like, great. And then they did Game Pass, and you could buy them, and you could play them, you could do all sorts. PlayStation just sort of sits there. They've got, Grand Theft Auto, San Andreas, I think Vice City. They've got the PC ports of Final Fantasy 9 and 7, I think 8 now as well. They've got, 1 or 2 titles from the PS2. But if you get the Vita has a massive library of PS1 games. The PS3 has a massive library of PS1 and 2 games. It's sort of, I don't know, I collect like a lot of old consoles, as you know, but like there's no real backwards compatibility element there, which is weird. You used to have to buy adapters. It sort of got bred into us with the PS2, I guess.
Yeah.
And there's been this expectation that you should be able to play all the old stuff on the new consoles, which isn't always the way. But if you're going to take away the disc compatibility, because obviously that's going to become an issue.
Yeah.
You know, as discs get older, they do rot, they die. Mm-hmm. So you've got to really look after any old games, by the way, if anybody's collecting discs. But like, if you're going to get rid of that element, then at least give us an option to buy them. And I mean, with all the first-party titles that Nintendo and PlayStation have, because Nintendo do something similar with the Switch Online. Like the Wii U, they had, you know, N64 games. They had a massive group of games from the back catalogue. But it's just sort of, now they just give you that SNES Online, NES Online, where they hand pick a couple of games every month. And it's just, for a few quid, you're going to stop so much piracy, and you're going to make a little bit of money, and you know, we'll probably be able to play them in real HD.
I was thinking about this I was in CEX the other day, and because I always go in and just see what like PS1 games they have in there, and I thought, I mean, I've got a copy of Tomb 2, which is it's like semi-valuable, but the first one, Tomb 1, is like...
It's like gold dust,
yeah. It is. And I was in there, and I thought, man, I wonder if anyone has ever brought a copy of Tomb to a CEX, but not knowing what they've got, and getting ripped off. And then I suddenly had this idea that, like, hang on, like, if PS5 has backwards compatibility, which people are saying might be the case, or even if it didn't, in fact, if Sony decided to just like bring out a load of digital copies of old games, which, you know, there's big holes at the moment in what's available on PS4, and I thought, like, it would suddenly massively affect the market value of some of these things. Like, I know having an actual physical version of Tomb, for example, would still, the price of it would still be there. But, you know, suddenly it would be available to so many people who might want to play it but don't have like 300 quid to be spending on a physical version.
I think it is going to affect the collectible market, but I think as well a lot of the collectible side of things is it's more condition, and people are sort of, I mean, Christ, I've just dropped like more money than I'm willing to admit on Japanese Sega Saturn games.
Right.
But it's sort of, I guess, when you are a collector of something, it's like a passion thing.
Yeah.
You are more willing to spend, but I would like to see if it would affect the cost of games, because Panzer Dragoon Saga, there's a copy in CEX at the top of Northumberland Street now. Sega Saturn classic game. I think it's 1 and 2 together in the box set. It's like 280 quid.
Right.
And it's just insane. Like, so if that stuff's readily accessible, then what's going to happen?
That's what you've got to sort of decide in which kind of direction that these companies want to take it, either allowing anyone to play any of their old games, or by just putting backwards compatibility in so that you have it, you can play it. Because I believe some of these games they can't resell anymore because of licensing.
Totally. Like Tomb is a bad example.
Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 2, for example. The music in that, they can't resell that digitally. Like they can't do that. Which is why the PS1 classics that you talked about on PS3 and PSP and Vita, they're mostly first party, and some really obscure ones, because they're the only ones that they properly had the rights to. So it would probably be easier to build in some kind of emulator that allows you to put your old discs in. Obviously that's very difficult with Nintendo software, because they've had about 10 different cartridges over the years, and mini discs and all sorts of stuff.
I know there was a problem with the PS4. Apparently the speed of the clock would need to be increased somehow to work as like a multiple on the same level as some of the older software. But the emulator would surely do that. But
then you look at their PlayStation Classic, they just put an emulator.
Just an emulator.
Just a USB stick with an emulator on it. In a
this
shell.
This is the thing, is I sort of had a hunch as to why we weren't getting all of these big titles and stuff, and it's like, I think part of it was initially I thought that people like Nintendo were going to put out like the NES Classic, SNES Classic, and they were going to implement a store.
Right, yeah.
Because if you've got these things, because like the NES and SNES Classic, you can literally just boot a load of games onto it after you've flashed it, and it'll run whatever you want. I think people have got like all sorts of consoles running through them. But I thought they'd implement the store, especially with PlayStation Classic, because it would make sense, because I think you couldn't sort of work around and put ROMs on it very easily.
I think people have done it now, but
they worked away. But I think initially it was sort of, you couldn't quite get it done that quickly. But like, I thought, like, you know, bang up a load of games on a store for $4 or £5 each.
Yeah.
And people could just build their own little library.
And even like if there are games that Sony don't have the rights to redistribute, just try and encourage like current right holders of those games to just create a digitized version, like an emulatable version of their game, and just start selling it on the store. Like they should have an initiative.
This is why I sincerely hope, as a PlayStation fan, that the rumors are true, because backwards compatibility is becoming increasingly a sort of a hot issue in the industry. Xbox, as you said, is going above and beyond with letting people play their old games.
They are getting rid of their disc drives, though.
That's true.
I think after this next generation, that'll be it for physical media.
Right.
And that breaks my heart.
That makes this generation all the more important.
Yeah.
As potentially the last generation that allows you to play the entire back catalogue of Xbox, the entire back catalogue of PlayStation. They need to get it right. And as the box isn't out yet, and they've had years and years to design it and think about it, you would hope that unless there was some sort of insidious business practice in place where they have they have a financial incentive to not let you play your old games because they want to sell them back to you, or because there are licensing issues, then hopefully they'll put it in the PS5 and the
I think
Xbox
it's
One X,
important to sort of preserve it as well, though. It's like there's preservation of important media in like libraries all over the world, and I think that there's a need to basically be able to have all of these games as digital files at some point, so that it is all there to chronicle of gaming history. So I don't know. Like I think we just need, because at the minute, like all that's happening is I might have a Raspberry Pi and I might be playing games that I haven't paid for, but so's tens and hundreds of thousands, millions of other people.
Is there any option?
Yeah, because there's no other option. And there was this like sort of outcry recently where it seemed like Nintendo were going to prevent people from reselling unapproved games, like pre-owned stuff from like NES and SNES stuff, but I think that calmed down. There's like, for collectors and people that really like physical media, I mean it's tough times as it is. You pay 50, 60 quid for a game, more than ever before, and you're not even getting like a booklet with it. But it's I think like physical media is important. We need to keep hold of it. Yeah,
I agree in terms of like preservation, even aside from physical, but just the idea that I don't mind so much if my discs that I own, that I've been collecting, eventually go bad and I can't play them, but as long as there will always be a version of that game somewhere for me to emulate. Like I hate the idea that one day, some of the more obscure PS1 games in my
will just go down and that'll be it.
Yeah, and they'll just be gone forever. So I think it's important that there's ROMs out there and ways of playing them forever.
Yeah. Absolutely. Well, I think we totally agree with you there. All emulators have been cut.
They have, definitely.
So now it's completely up to the console manufacturers to let us play our old games, because emulators, they got forever.
I was always surprised as well they never did re-releases, like for anniversaries. Why haven't they done, like a big anniversary of Final Fantasy VII, or the new game coming out? Why didn't they do a remastered special edition with a PS1 case and copy? Like, they have the means. They sold Marilyn Manson like 100,000 CDs with the black bottoms for his last album release. They still have all of that. Sega still has cartridges they're giving to smaller people that are making games. I mean, there's still Dreamcast games coming out every year. There's still Mega Drive games or Genesis games coming out every single year.
Officially.
The Master System is one of the biggest selling consoles. I think the PS2 is just starting to really take hold in Brazil, like in terms of accessibility. But like, there's just so much stuff that I think, say 30th anniversary of a game, why aren't they doing a PS1 style release, or like an original NES case? They have all of that stuff,
like
surely.
In the boxes, dual cases and stuff,
They surely have all of the, like, I'm assuming Square will have all of the original booklets and everything still on file. You'd be able to just ship it all off, print it, and boom, cellophane wrap copy of a game.
And we have to hope that they actually do that, because of course the amount of real world copies of these original games are running low as people throw them away or they stop working. And as we've already discussed, emulators have now been cut from the world of video games. So it's the only way to experience them is on the original format, and hopefully the new consoles will make backwards compatibility
really hope.
just a little bit easier. Well, Sam, thank you so much for bringing those things to us today.
No bother, thanks for having me.
Oh, absolute pleasure. If people wanted to find you on a day-to-day basis, how would they do that?
You can find me over on the Cultaholic channel. You can follow us at Cultaholic on Twitter. You can follow me at Less Defined on Twitter.
And Instagram?
Instagram, I think I'm less_defined, but I barely use Instagram and I keep getting sort of told off about it.
Yeah, I keep forgetting.
Need to use it more. Stories and stuff, but I'm getting too old for this.
Right, we're going to go now. Thank you again to Sam for joining us, and if you have any suggestions for future guests, why not leave them in the comments below? We'll look at some point, I'm sure.
Jeff Goldblum.
Well,
Oh, that'd be a great get.
Go call him. We'll go. You know Jeff, don't you?
Yeah, he's sort of.
Yeah, we'll go call him now. Thanks for watching, everybody. We'll see you soon. Bye.
Bye.